Katsucon 2014, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Katsucon was an anime convention held from February 14th to 16th, 2014 at the Gaylord National Resort and Convention Center in National Harbor, Maryland. Now, this is my second year to attend Katsucon, and I came into it with some rather high hopes. It was a very good convention last year, lots of great guests and content and excellent cosplay. Now, the opinions you're going to see in this video are also from a panelist perspective. I paneled the con this year, and thankfully it got me out of some issues that other attendees tended to have. So, how about we will start off with the good points. So for the good, registration as a panelist was smooth. The head of my panels group told the people at the desk that I was on the panel with them. I showed them my pre-registration form I printed out, and I got my badge. It took less than 5 minutes. Again, the badges were nice, hard plastic, really durable, and I was back to the con. Dealer's room was really impressive. They expanded the dealer's room heavily this year, and it was giant, really lots of good quality, lots of dealers, almost everything you could hope for. It wasn't as big as, say, Otakon, but it was on the quality scale of Otakon. Lots of stuff. It was just really, really impressive. It had a good depth. Depth in panels, it was possibly better than Otakon. They had some great panels. The cultural panels they bring to this con are top-notch, and I wish I could have attended more of them, but it seemed like they brought interesting panels. There was lots to attend, even with cancellations that happened due to the weather. Just the panel quality at this con is extremely good. So this year we stayed at the Gaylord. Last year we stayed at the Westin and had a perfectly good experience. We had no problems with the Gaylord. It was a smooth experience. Check-in was smooth. Check-out was smooth. Everything got to our room, and we found an elevator bank very close to the gazebo that got us up to the room quite easily most of the time. And overall, we got extra towels when we needed it. So, a pretty good experience with the Gaylord Resort. Guidebook was kept pretty well updated for the most part. You really need a guidebook with schedule changes to get around the con. Yeah, there's not much more to add than that. They actually did keep guidebook updated. So let's move on to the bad. While these are things that are not exactly under control of Katsucon, these are some of the bad things I ran into during the convention. The weather was terrible. I mean, Thursday prevented us from even making an attempt. We had 6 to 10 inches of snow where I live. We're about 3.5 hours north of National Harbor. So we actually had a delay in coming until Friday, which really didn't affect the overall experience, but it still tweaked it a little bit. And National Harbor food, there's just not enough budget options, and they closed early. A lot of stuff closed around 10 o'clock. Subway, Elemental Burger. A lot of people were eating Baja Fresh, which, you know, it's a good thing they were there, because I bet you half the attendees at the con probably ate there at least once. I kind of wish in the open areas right next to the hotel that they would put a Wendy's in. The McDonald's is just a little too far away for a walk for most people, and there's just not a lot of budget options in the area. A lot of places are upper scale, and you're looking, instead of maybe a $7 meal, you're spending closer to $13 to $14, and for some con attendees, that's not good. That's just too expensive. I was able to find places for breakfast, thankfully, and one time the one restaurant, even though it was Valentine's Day, made me a special order because I misread the menu, and they still made it and were cool about it. So it's just one of the negative things about the area, not enough budget options for food. Now, let's move on to the ugly part, which are things that could have been a little bit better. Okay, for the ugly part, the general registration line was awful. There were people reporting waits of anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. Some of it was due to the weather, some of it was due to their system crashing, apparently. It was something that vastly needs to be changed for next year. You can't have people waiting in line for that, and it was a good thing I was a panelist, because I would have not done well in that line. It looked bad from the outside, and I'm so glad I wasn't in it. Unfortunately, while we were panelists, the organization and support was not the best this year. Communication was not sharp. It really, we went down there, we originally got 2 panels. We did have to cancel one of them due to late notice. And so we ended up knowing we had one panel, and we ended up doing about 4 total in the end, because we did sign up for more when we got there due to the open spaces available, and we ended up having one before our main panel on Sunday morning, and communication there could have been a lot better, and that is something that's going to have to be improved. Now, down on the lower levels, the crowding by the fountains this year was probably some of the worst I've seen. And I don't mean around the fountains, I mean in front of it, in front of the sports bar. It was crowded there at all times and very hard to move around. I almost kind of wish maybe they would institute a no photos policy there and possibly put staff in the area to keep traffic moving through, because it was very hard to move through that area this year, and to a point that I started to avoid it a little bit. Now, I originally marked Guidebook above as good, but I also have to mark it a little bit as ugly because I don't think they updated it fast enough. An example is schedule changes often took a few hours before I got them, and several of our panels, as I said, we took on several more panels at the con. They were not put in the system till late, and I felt that Guidebook in some ways was a tad incomplete. Maybe some main events were not listed fast enough. I could not find them while trying to use the app, and that's unfortunately one area that will require improvement. And honestly, there were just not enough high-level voice actors as guests. Yes, they had Ellen Stern and Richard Epcar. They had the Airses. They also had a couple others and some webcomics, but they didn't have that A-plus level voice actor like a Habercorn or a Baker. Just to tighten that lineup and really bring people into the convention that might like voice actors. That's something that needs to be improved for next year, because compared to last year's lineup, this convention was pretty weak voice actors-wise. And not saying the ones here were bad, it just they weren't as heavy-duty, popular, going to put butts in seats as, say, last year's crowd. My final thoughts are, it's just, I have questions after hearing this con I didn't have last year. Is it too crowded? Did I get my money's worth? I actually did do this con for less money than I did last year, but I was here for 1 day less. Due to the weather, was this too much stress for a con? And I think I'm going to have some questions about returning next year. Yes, the cosplay was beautiful, lots of photography opportunities. The location is extremely interesting. It's a fun location. National Harbor could be better, but I still think I'm going to have to ask a few questions about returning next year, just because of the amount of stress it took to get here. So I'm going to give this year a B-. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't as good as last year, frankly. I'm hoping that they make some improvements to the convention. I'm hoping maybe they fix some of the issues they ran into this year. Some was weather-related, so I will give them a break there. But honestly, I think a B- is a fair score for this con. Been to better, been to worse. We'll have to see about returning next year. Thanks for watching Katsucon 2014, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.